Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. I'm gonna be honest, it has been a crazy morning already. So I got the big mug. I say big, it's like the equivalent of a small in America, but for me this is large. There's a fly. Okay, I need like 10 of those. So today I want to talk about watching movies or TV shows with subtitles in your native language. So therefore not the language that you're learning. So let's say that you're learning Russian and you're watching a Russian movie for the purposes of improving your Russian skills, and you're watching it with subtitles in your native language. Let's say English, for example, in my case. Now, the reason why I find this very, very interesting is that the most common perspective I seem to hear floating around the internet and people that I've spoken to in many different cases is that people feel this is kind of useless. Maybe it's okay to do, but I hear a lot of people say that it's not really helpful for learning a language. And I even hear a lot of the sort of, content first, input-based learning purist people, say that this is just not helpful at all. Frankly, it's useless, and that you should be, pushing yourself to consume that content directly in the language that you're learning. Now, I actually tend to totally disagree here. Now, I think we should remember how challenging it actually is to consume things like movies and TV shows directly in another language, especially if you don't have any subtitles. I remember living in Japan when I was an interpreter, and even at that level where I had no trouble at all understanding my Japanese lecturers or understanding my coworkers or any of these different things, it was actually still very challenging for me to understand Japanese TV dramas with no subtitles. And there are so many factors that make this more challenging than everyday conversations. First of all, people often forget that in a movie, people speak more intelligently than people do in real life. What I mean by that is people speak in a very articulate way, and they string ideas and thoughts together way more fluidly than we do in real life. In real life, we have all these filler words, we pause, we rephrase things. Maybe we start saying something and we kind of realize that doesn't make sense and we backtrack. There are so many things about real life conversation and the way people actually speak that give us, the listener, a lot of opportunities for comprehending things and sort of processing what we're hearing. Whereas in a movie, everything that they're saying, it's scripted for the most part, and so they don't tend to use anywhere near as many filler words or ums and ahs. You also have all this background noise. Maybe you have, many people speaking at once. Maybe you have sound quality issues. So for a variety of reasons, accessing that content without subtitles is very challenging. And that's of course why having subtitles in the native language, or the one that you're learning, is an amazingly helpful tool. And I could talk for days about the ways that I use that for learning languages. But that doesn't mean that for people who are not at that level yet, people who are not yet at the point where they're able to start diving into movies or dramas with native subtitles and really getting a lot of value, it doesn't mean that they don't have a way to consume content that's also helpful for language learning. So the first way this is helpful is for motivation. It's incredibly motivating when you start consuming lots of this content in a language that you're learning, but especially movies and TV shows, because I find them to be such culturally immersive experiences. It's really amazing how much you can get to learn about a place and about a culture and the way people behave, maybe even things like societal or political issues, because all these movies and TV shows, the crux of their story, it's going to be something specific to the culture of the place where that film or TV show is taking place. A lot of this is what I like to describe as cultural literacy. That's a term that I love, and this is stuff that you will eventually have to know regardless if you're going to become a really advanced speaker of the language. So there's no reason why you can't start acquiring that knowledge early on, and if you're not at the level yet where you can use native subtitles, then using subtitles in your native language, that's a great way of starting to access that content. But there's actually a lot more than that which you can benefit with your language learning. So for example, there are so many small little things that you can pick up that they may not be helpful by themselves. And so just watching movies with, let's say, English subtitles, and I'm watching Japanese movies, yes, that's not going to make me a fluent speaker. However, I have found languages like French, where I actually watched a lot of French movies really early on while I was still a beginner. And so I did use English subtitles. I realized later, once I started to become a more competent speaker, there were so many of these like little filler words, or like I remember that I used to struggle saying, oh really, in French, and I would always say it differently, like ah vraiment, ah oui. But like through watching loads of movies, people often say like ah bon, like they use ah bon, and I remember like knowing that, right? And there are so many little examples like that, just little things about the way people actually speak, whether it's filler words, small connecting words, or even just like the attitude, like the way that French people speak, for example, they have this sort of, it's like they shrug with their face, like there's so many little things that I picked up through that process of just enjoying all those movies in French that later on became very helpful. Now, languages where I didn't really consume a lot of content, I didn't really start watching movies or TV shows or anything like that till later on. Well, I actually found that as I became kind of an intermediate speaker, and I was actually starting to become conversational, I would very often find myself hitting these gaps, like while I was trying to speak. It was all these little things like saying, oh really? That like, I didn't know how to say them because I didn't learn that in my, Pimsleur course, or I didn't learn that in my textbook. And so I just wanted to share that today, just so that, if you're a beginner or like a low intermediate or whatever it might be, there's no reason why you cannot start both collecting a stockpile of movies and TV shows and things that you want to enjoy directly in the language later, but there's also no reason why you can't start enjoying those using subtitles in your native language rather than the native language of the content. And I think especially if you become very aware of all these different benefits that I described today, then you can really get a lot of value. You can really start, being on the lookout for like, what are all the filler words people say? How do people tend to pause? What's the rhythm like in this language? What kind of things do people find funny, right? Because a lot of times, let's say there's some comedy, you're gonna start to get a sense of what, let's say, Japanese people find funny. And so again, I think if you develop this ability to notice all these little things, then there's absolutely tons of benefit that you can get watching this kind of content with your native language subtitles. And I just think that I don't think it's correct to say that it's useless. Okay, everybody, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Of course, if you enjoy this content and you haven't already, please do give me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you back here on Friday for the next episode of Reviving My German, where I'm gonna actually speak some German. Okay, everybody, have a great day, happy Wednesday, and I'll see you back here on Friday.